It's Wellness Wednesdays. This Wellness Wednesday, we're dealing with comments from Friday, and it was something that I'm like, wow, I talk about this all the time, but maybe I need to really drill down on it. And this is going to be sort of a funnel of a bunch of things, because a lot of people obviously are being very strongly continuously affected by, the fallout, affected by the shooting of Charlie Kirk, but then the fallout from it as well, because of course, people are losing their jobs, and the debate all again and again is, do they deserve to lose their jobs for social media comments? And that's not what this video is about. It's about a comment that someone made to Friday's video that I think he got an answer he didn't expect from me, because the exchange went, well, let's do the help support this channel and then I'll get into the exchange. So help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. If you are feeling like overwhelming bad feelings, please talk to someone. Please call a crisis line. Please talk to a friend. Please talk. Don't resort to things that you cannot undo. Okay? But the conversation went as follows. It was here and I made it. Okay, so the commenter said, my sympathy towards Kirk will fall within the range of sympathy he offered to George Floyd, the Minnesota Democrats, and Mr. Pelosi. Hopefully he was kind. And I responded, why are you giving yourself a permission structure to be as bad as him? And one person said, I'm sorry, what? The man was a white supremacist bigot who hated trans, gays, and blacks, and if you think us not feeling sorry for him being gone is the same as all his hate, then you've lost the damn plot, Leanna. That's not what I said. And the first guy that made the comment was more reasonable. He actually engaged instead of engaging in shame tactics, because that was not, I did not say anyone was required to feel sorry for Charlie Kirk. I was responding to people saying, I'll have as much sympathy as he had for George Floyd, so on and so forth. And I mean, Charlie Kirk had less than zero sympathy for George Floyd. It's interesting because Charlie Kirk, the whole empathy is a new age concept, the complete quote of Charlie Kirk's, because I looked it up, was that he doesn't like the word empathy. He prefers the term sympathy. And yet he didn't engage in sympathy a lot of the time either. He called, I'm not going to say quotes, because if you get even one word wrong, you get the horde. It's not the point. The point is that nobody's saying you have to feel sorry for Charlie Kirk. It's just, don't make his bad behavior your benchmark. That's what I was saying. Not, if you think us not feeling sorry for him being gone is the same as all his hate, then you've lost the damn plot. I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Why would I say that? But, I'm supposed to have empathy for this commenter spinning out, right? Right? It's always the other guy's responsibility. But like I said, the original commenter actually engaged. Would you consider the golden rule a permission structure to be bad? Because that's all this is, a restructuring of the golden rule. Also, I don't think I'm being bad. He withheld sympathy out of cruelty and maliciousness. I withhold my sympathy because he was cruel and malicious. And lastly, my sympathy is mine to give. Like respect, I don't owe it to anyone. Withholding it isn't bad unless you are also withholding respect and even sympathy on a level that ignores their humanity and autonomy. But even that can be revoked if the person in question acts inhuman. To put it simply, this is not a permission structure. This is the fundamentals of how human decency operates. Now, I'll read my comment, but I want to say the sympathy here is not for Charlie Kirk. The sympathy is for a woman who lost her husband and kids who lost their father. That's where the sympathy comes in here. And Anderson freaking Cooper, of all people, nailed this. And here's why it works. Okay, because I turned on CNN for the first time in ages because I just wanted to see what people were saying. And Anderson Cooper happened to be online when Charlie Kirk's widow was doing that live stream. And you may know, Anderson Cooper is gay. He's married and they have kids through a surrogate, I believe, but don't quote me. But Anderson Cooper has every right to have resentment towards Charlie Kirk because, of course, you know, Charlie Kirk did not have great things to say about gay people. Again, I'm not going to quote it, but whenever you are referencing, I believe it's Leviticus 18, Leviticus 18:22, referring to relations between a man and a man, stating it as an abomination, right? So that's the basis of, I believe Charlie Kirk referred it to as the perfect word of God on the matter. No, that's cherry picking, but still, that's what he said. Now, Anderson Cooper could have taken the low road and just, whatever. I don't want to even cover this woman. It's my show. We're not covering it. Instead, he empathized and sympathized with the widow as a man who has a father, imagining what it would be like to have to tell his kids his partner wasn't coming home because someone had shot him. And that was a moment where a man had sympathy for, if we assume that Charlie Kirk's wife has the same views on gay people as her husband did, which is, I think, a safe assumption. He connected with a family that doesn't believe he should have one with the man he loves. And it was powerful. I'm like, this is the best example of why any person who wants to be married to another adult should be able to. Because it does create more that makes us the same or similar than different. Because gay people are allowed to get married and have families, he could put himself in that position. He could have empathy, because that's what empathy is. It's understanding the feelings, right? As opposed to sympathy, which is feeling that. Now, the commenter said sympathy. Charlie Kirk took issues with empathy, but Charlie Kirk wasn't great with sympathy either. Oxford Dictionary, empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another, which is what Anderson Cooper did. Sympathy is feelings of pity and sorrow for someone else's misfortune. Right? So, empathy was what Anderson Cooper did. And empathy was what Charlie Kirk said he didn't believe in. And yet Charlie Kirk did it all the time. That's why when he was effective, he was effective. Because he was able to not make a ton of sense logically, but He appealed to people's emotions. He appealed to people's, there's a gut feeling that you should be able to say unpopular things. There's a gut feeling that people, should not be shot for saying unpopular things. There's also a gut feeling that people react badly to thinking they have to feel sorry for people that they think didn't care about them or were bad people. And you don't have to. But Anderson Cooper showed why it's a good idea. Because in that moment, he was just a father. If you didn't know he was married to another man, you wouldn't know. And it was the way any father would think about this. Like, oh my God, my mother did have to explain to me when I was 6 about my friend and most of her family dying on Air India Flight 182. And these things are not about other people. These things are about ourselves. And this is the mistake tactically that the left keeps making. Every time somebody you don't agree with acts cruelly, that's a gift to you. Now you return the gift if you act just as bad as they are, because then you create an equivalency that people looking at it go, well, y'all a bunch of assholes. Instead of what Anderson Cooper did, which, that's a nice man. Okay, he seems like a good person. And most people, that's really when it comes down to, and like I'm talking about the people in the parts of the US and, the parts of Alberta and stuff like that, that we really need to reach. I'm talking about the people who, I knew somebody who they used they, them pronouns. They were a non-binary person, and they started lecturing me on not sounding woke because they're in Alberta. The way you reach people who are just saying words without knowing what they mean, responding emotionally, is to be decent. It's not for the person you can't stand. It's because that way you are a good representative of the views you believe strongly in. So with that preamble, let me get into how I responded to this commenter and what they said that gave me something to respond to. Where is the blinking thing? I lost it. Here it is. Okay. So, remember they said, would I consider the golden rule of permission structure to be bad? Remember, fundamentals of how human decency operate. But the question was, would I consider the golden rule of permission structure to be bad? And I said, and I've talked about this before, I actually do believe the golden rule in the Christian tradition is a permission structure to do bad things. I've talked about that numerous times. I practice not do unto others, but what is hateful to you, don't do to others. And this is actually documented. The golden rule in Christianity, it's the Sermon on the Mount, right? Matthew 7:12 and Luke 6:31. In everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, right? What you would have them do to you, do unto others. That is the Christian version. However, you have to take the Christian golden rule in context of Matthew 5:39, which is, but I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil, but if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. You can't take one without the other. And so even in the context of the golden rule, because Matthew 5 comes before Matthew 7 You can't violate, turn the other cheek, and argue the golden rule. But the Jewish golden rule is the one I follow. It comes from Rabbi Hillel, an interpretation of the biblical commandment found in Leviticus 19:18. Oh, Leviticus. Yeah, Charlie Kirk can do Leviticus, so can I. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And so, and that was actually the biblical passage that Charlie Kirk was responding to from a prove me wrong person when he brought up Leviticus 18, right? It was a dodge. But what is hateful to you, do not do. The translations vary. It's either do not do to your neighbor or to do to your friend. I prefer to your neighbor because it's more all-encompassing, right? Now, they are very different. And I've talked about this before, because you can turn the golden rule, if you just take the golden rule and don't turn the other cheek, into it's just decency to don't go above the bar the other person sets, because, well, the way they behaved, I can assume that this is the way they want other people to treat them. First of all, you can't assume that. Second of all, that's not turning the other cheek. But what I said is do unto others is what the person is doing here. My version is, do I want someone whacking me because I have some bad takes and have people dance on my grave? Well, no. Well, then I'm not going to act like it's okay just because I don't like the guy. And that's why I argued that this guy's interpretation of the golden rule gives him permission to be petty. Mine doesn't. And I don't do this because it's good people points. I don't do this because I think I'm more moral than anybody else. I do this because I don't. I do this because I know I'm capable of bile and resentment and all of the other negative emotions that people feel. And I have to create checks on that instead of cherry picking scripture to allow me to do what I want, which is what most people do. And this is where empathy is the smart tactic. And I'm going to go with empathy instead of sympathy, because you can't fake sympathy. You know, there's a lot of performative, oh, that poor person, you know. I'm not saying you have to. I'm saying let's use empathy to think this through. Instead of feeling bad for a guy you can't stand, put yourself in that position. Because we've all had takes online that people think are shitty. I've been called a baby killer. I've been called a transphobe. I've also been called a deviant, an abomination, and I'm going to hell because I'm not Christian. Say any of those people decided to take those strong opinions into their own hands. I know there are people out there who would cheer. They would be partying in the streets. They would be popping bottles. I don't think terribly highly of those people. I know their character. So my way of continuing to go, nope, what they're doing is wrong, is to not stoop to their level. You can't use the golden rule to stoop to other people's level. That's not what it was intended to do. The idea of loving thy neighbor, it's a bit of poetry. We didn't have terms like empathy, you know, in ancient Hebrew. And oh, yeah, that was Hebrew. Sorry, all the people that you know, don't like hearing that now. Okay, that was said with a bit of mockery, but I do understand that some people have a knee-jerk reaction to anything traditionally Jewish right now because of what's going on in Gaza. And I have a reaction to that knee-jerk reaction, right? Because not everybody has the same view of what Zionism means. And again, when I'm dealing with people who feel very strongly about that I don't agree with, how do I want to be treated? Well, I'm going to set that tone. Not, I'm going to sit back and wait to see how shitty the other person is and then respond in kind. That's just proving them right about everything they think. Because of course they're going to be shitty. They've been taught to be shitty. They don't even realize how shitty what they're saying is. They don't know how some of these phrases land, and I'm not going to repeat them because YouTube demonetizes them. But I don't think they're bad people. I don't assume they're bad people. I think they've been fed a particular ideology that is designed to create hatred and resentment. And it's not their fault. The same way a lot of political ideologies right now are designed to enrage, because that engages people. And at the end of the day, strategists really don't care why you get out and vote, as long as you get out and vote. And love thy neighbor goes out the window because hate the other guy is a more short-term successful political strategy. I don't agree it's good advocacy. Because right now, I did gay rights advocacy when it was unpopular. I started before it hit 50%. When gay marriage was legalized in Canada, it was just hovering slightly under 50% support publicly. The people who got that passed through government did it via an empathy exercise. They went from MP to MP and made personal appeals. And it's one of the few historical instances in politics where people just did the right thing because they thought it was the right thing. There was no calculus there. It was dead split. 50-50. That's how we get there. And right now, support for trans rights in general, we have a majority on that. Support for things like trans girls playing sports on girls' teams, nah. The majority actively opposes that. And because of that, because anything to do with kids and what people believe are, permanent changes, because they've managed to convince them that puberty blockers are permanent. They're not. You stop taking them, puberty resumes. But because of that, we don't have the luxury of being, of lacking compassion, of being petty, or of being sadistic. It doesn't matter that when Trump was running the first time, people had posters of Hillary Clinton with gun sight crosshairs on her face. It doesn't matter, because we're not asking people to change change their opinions, change the way things are done, be okay with this, or tolerate things they're not okay with. We're not asking based on the behavior of the people who hate Hillary Clinton. We're asking based on us, based on our character, being people that people want to listen to. And that's why what Anderson Cooper did was so powerful. He turned the other cheek. He was better to the Kirk family than they would have been to his family. Those are the people want to listen to. Those are the people that people want to hear from. And yes, they don't vote for them. I'm not suggesting anybody run for office. I'm talking about the human element of these issues. It's not, I mean, think about it. You're going to care as much as Charlie Kirk did. Okay, well then people are going to care about you as much as they cared about Charlie Kirk. And in that person's circles, it sounds like people didn't have a high opinion of the guy. Do you want that? Then keep behaving this way. The golden rule is all about doing to others what you want them to do to you, not what they've already did. You're not God's avenging angel. You're not. You're a person. And you're going to be judged based on what you do. And nobody buys, yeah, but they did it first. Nobody does. Even the people that repeat it know it's BS. It's just convenient. The challenge with progressive movements is that we are the ones asking people to change. And again, I was doing this in the 90s. I got gay bashed, okay? I got outed in high school. And it was not talking about it. It was hard. It was humiliating, and it was kind of soul destroying. And part of the reason I do what I do is I don't want anybody else to ever go through that again. And I don't mean just good people. I mean any person. 'Cause if fewer of those things happen, the fewer excuses people have to be bad. And that's the problem. Well, this guy was bad, so I'm going to make my behavior about him instead of about me. That's how people end up thinking about other human beings as abominations, as opposed to people like Anderson Cooper, who, you know, they might think I'm an abomination, but I don't think they are. I mean, I attempted that with, it's weird because the guy keeps posting on my content, but he was sending me like shitty things about the Holocaust, deliberately trying to provoke me, and admits he thinks I'm going to hell because, again, I'm not Christian, and he doesn't see anything wrong with this. And those of you watching this probably see everything wrong with that. He's not using empathy. He's not putting himself in the position, because this is one of these guys who think that the progressives will, show up as a mob and like lynch conservatives if they could. He's not using that fear to put himself in my place and think about, he's not just saying I'm going to have a miserable life, because life is finite. He believes I'm going to suffer actively in agony forever. And he sees nothing wrong with that. And I treated him better than he treated me. Because, there are certain things he does that go against even his own book, right? Mine too. But when he started actively doing shitty things, that's when I was done. Because he knew what he was doing. He did it deliberately. That's no longer a difference of opinion. That is behavior. And I behave better than that because that's my line. That is how I can talk to people who think I'm evil, who think I'm polluted, who think I'm an abomination. I don't have to believe that about them either. That is just the excuse of a frightened person, because sometimes all you can do is pity people because you don't respect them. And let me tell you, having spoken to a lot of these, U.S. Christian conservatives, they are constantly terrified. They are. They do believe that the woke mob is coming. No joke. We know it's not, but they live in perpetual fear. Not only that, they live in fear for their own souls. And that is so crippling that they can't focus on it. They have to keep deflecting and projecting their terror that their soul is going to burn forever onto people like me. And they don't see it as, I don't want to believe that you're going to burn in hell, Leanna. I just do. And, well, no, because nobody knows. So, that's a choice. And that's not loving your neighbor. Because keep in mind, Leviticus was written when the Hebrew people were a tiny minority, and there's the Gaza people screaming because they believe that's fiction. They believe that Jews in the Holy Land is a fake. We come from Europe. But I do. Okay. Can't lie about that. But, I come from Canada. I was born in Canada, which means I'm a product of colonialism. But does that make me a bad person? Well, if it does, I can't do anything about it, right? We all have something like that. We all have something that somebody's gonna think we're evil. And this word evil gets thrown around. And let me tell you something I've learned about every transphobe I personally met. I don't consider J.K. Rowling somebody I personally met. I mean, somebody I've sat down to and really got a sense with. Every homophobe, every transphobe. The phobe is real. And phobic does not mean hate. Phobe means fear. I know it's become a word that means hate, but the original Greek, arachnophobia, fear of spiders, right? It's fear. I watched guys break out in a sweat when they found out that was a gay man in the room. I know people are legitimately concerned that children are being pushed into medical procedures that aren't good for them because they were pushed into things that they didn't feel right about when they were kids. And they had good parents, but they didn't involve their parents in things because various reasons, but a lot of the time they didn't want to disappoint their parents. They didn't want to be a burden to them. So these concerns come from good places, even if you don't agree with the, and I am not talking about religious objections on that one. I'm talking about the people who are persuadable. They emphasis on persuadable. And in order to persuade, we must behave well. Y'all think I'm a transphobe because I said don't shit on people for playing Hogwarts Legacy. That's fine. I'll wear that. I know it's not true, but I'll take it. And here's why. Because people will listen to me when they won't listen to you, do-gooder. Because even though I didn't play the game myself, and I said why, and I did feel a bit of a clench in the pit of my stomach, wondering, I had a moment. It's like, can I trust this person? Because they know what our views are, and they're playing it anyway. But instead of judging them, I talked to them. And the answers I heard were basically the movies were such a big part of my childhood. And they gave me the sense that I could be different and be okay. And I just can't detach from that. And so they know what her views are. But they think that the work itself, the movies, actually move people away from the original author's views. And one of the things that the movies really sanded off from the books was the weird cruelty. Like, it nerfed what the Marauders did to Snape. A lot of the day-to-day bullying, the false rumors that Ginny spread about parts of Harry's body, which that's sexual harassment, claiming you've seen tattoos on somebody's chest. It is. Those got sanded off. No, it's not gone, but significantly reduced. I mean, Dumbledore being gay is not overtly in the books. That came from the movies. J.K. Rowling passed a note in a meeting, apparently. We can talk about what it means with a deeply closeted gay man teaching a boy he was priming for slaughter about love. We can talk about whether that's healthy, but that's the thing. We talk about it, right? I remember when that 7th book came out, and my nieces and nephews were utterly distraught over all the death. And we came up with a game of, I was like, because I'm like, oh my God, they're like really upset by how many characters. And I was upset by how many characters. I like threw that 7th book across the room twice. But I'm like, can you imagine Harry Potter in therapy? Like, tell me about your mother. She's dead. Tell me about your father. He's dead. Your favorite teacher? Well, he was the headmaster. He's dead. Your least favorite teacher? Dead. Your pet? Dead. Your best friend? Well, he's alive. Oh, good. But his brother's dead. Oh. Imaginary friend. Oh, yeah. Dobby, I really miss the guy. He died too. Out of my office, I cannot help you. And these kids just burst out laughing. And out of my office, I cannot help you became this punchline. And we turned something that might be traumatic into a funny run-on joke. And that's empathy. And that's sympathy of not going, oh, suck it up, kids. I dealt with Transformers the movie. You know, yeah, I dealt with Transformers the movie. I want to make it easier for people, right? And sympathy, again, is pitying someone. Most people don't see pity as a respectful activity, which is why I actually prefer empathy to sympathy. Because sympathy is, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. Empathy is, let's put myself in this situation. Yep, that would suck. And then it's, what do you do next? Do you do what you would want somebody to do for you? That's what most people you think you're supposed to do, but it's actually wrong. From a mental health perspective, it's actually wrong. When you do facilitation work, when you do, mentor work, things like that, it's more about avoiding pitfalls. So, some people don't like that, avoid that. Some people don't like that, avoid that. Do not give advice. Peer counseling is client focused. The client is the authority on them, not you. That's, why you don't need a license to be an AA sponsor. That's why you don't need a license to do what I do. It's, here's what I did, but try it. If it doesn't work for you, that's great. We'll find something else. You're putting the other person in the driver's seat. And that's why what is hateful to you, do not do unto your friend, works better than in everything do to others what you would have them do to you. Because I don't think most people would say, yeah, if I said a few dozen things people find abhorrent, they have the right to do anything they want to me. I don't think people would go, yeah, when I die, go ahead and spit on my grave and talk about what a terrible person I am. For the record, I really don't care. I don't know why this is so important for certain people, but for me, funeral services, lionizing the person, it's for people they left behind. And I didn't go to my own father's funeral because I thought, hey, maybe there are people, maybe he did change late in life. maybe there's people who really do miss him. I'm going to let them have that. I'm not going to walk through the door with bitterness and resentment and trauma. Now, apparently that funeral was a complete shit show, and the people who did go because, oh, it's the right thing to do, that it was the wrong thing to do. It was apparently just a disaster. I did the right thing for me, and I did the right thing for the people there. You know, not out of any respect for my biological father. No, out of respect for the ritual and the people who are hurting. They have the right to mourn without somebody spitting on them. They have the right to think whatever is going to get them through the day, the week, the month, the year. And I can hope that the hardship and the kindness of people like Anderson Cooper will someday make them turn away from thinking about other people like abominations. Because even if you practice the golden rule, that is, I mean, here's the problem. People are like, oh, I want everybody to show up and I want everybody to think wonderfully about me. Well, you can't control that. And I know that when I die, if anybody cares at all, there's going to be retrospectives about my early career and how problematic I was. Nothing I can do about it. And I stand by what I did. But based on the facts, what would I want? I just want people who don't like me to keep their fucking mouths shut. That's what I'd want. That's really what everyone reasonably wants. Please let my loved ones grieve and let them settle into their new reality and leave my kids the fuck alone. And somebody please, for God's sakes, take financial care of my wife because, well, let's face it, it's a conservative family with Charlie Kirk. He was probably the income. If we're really honest with ourselves, following the Christian golden rule, that is really what we want. And that tendency to want absolute superlatives for ourselves, not what is reasonable, and base our decisions based on base our expectations on other people based on that. Well, I want to be able to express myself. Well, yeah, but what if you hurt somebody with your words? Well, but I'm expressing myself. People really aren't as good when they're on the receiving end of that expression. And that's why, again, what is hateful unto you, don't do unto your neighbor, is really a better way to go. Do I want to be forced to hear, edgelord? I know some people don't like the word edgelord, but I'm trying not to use the word radical because it's not about that. Radical has just become, do I want to hear from people who hate the concept of me? No, I should have the right to avoid that. So everybody does. And my expression, my right to say anything I want, violates that. Because I don't want to be a thing that adds more misery than joy in the world, right? I don't want to be a person primarily remembered for the awful things they said. And you can say somebody's polarizing. I've been described as polarizing, but you pull up my quotes. Bobby Calloway's got them. They're not calling people abominations. Most of them are just ridiculous terms of phrase. Like my description of the Justice League was a hot fucking mess with a farmhouse in the middle of it, right? When I criticize somebody, I do it hoping they'll get better, not that they'll burn in hell. And it's really not that hard, you know? If I think someone is just an absolute reprehensible human, that's when the sympathy kicks in. I do pity them. Because everyone I've met, including the people cyberstalking me, they're deeply unhappy people. They cannot live in their own skin and in their own heads for a moment, which is why they keep coming after me. And there's no way I'm not going to give them a drop more sympathy than they give me, because look at how that makes them behave. I want my behavior to be better than that. Therefore, you're damn right I'm going to give the people who have been awful to me more empathy and sympathy than they displayed. Because that's the way I do better than them. I lose my ability to complain about what they do when I give it right back. Because if it's okay for me to do, then it's okay for them to do. It doesn't matter that they started it. That's ridiculous. That's why I focus on, okay, what can I not stand? I'm going to avoid that. As opposed to treat other people the way I'd want to be treated. Well, sometimes the way you want to be treated isn't practical. It isn't even right. We're fallible human beings. That's why it's not a good standard, and why truly I believe that thinking is a permission structure to do shitty things. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Cares session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Or like and subscribe to this channel if you like this kind of content. That helps me out as well, even if you don't have any money. Thanks for watching, and be well.